It's a rather breezy day here, and that's a beautiful paradox for somebody trying to record something that they want to be clear so that everybody can understand it and not get lost in the noise of the breeze that might well slap against the microphone, muffling or even distorting my voice. And yet I want to be out here in the noise of the breeze because this is a little, I think, very hands-on and practical reflection on change in making art, making fringe theatre. And the paradox is that the nature of art itself is change, quintessentially change. When you make work, whether that's written by you as a script, collaboratively devised together, the world and you are changed because you brought that change in the form of something new, something different. And it can sometimes be as disruptive as this breeze that's happening behind me, when it whips up into a storm and even the tree might be brought down. Change by its nature is usually the result of something that happens creatively, and it's welcome to artists and it's welcome to people going to look for creative work. And yet the paradox happens, and I'm thinking particularly of somebody that might do a whole run at a Fringe festival at Edinburgh. That can be 3 weeks or more, or whether you're touring what you've created around the country, and some things tour for a long time, some may just be 15-20 performances, and some do a run. I'm thinking of the Mousetrap in a theatre in London, literally for years, and the script has changed and the way it's been directed has changed, but ultimately there's very little change at the heart of that play, the Mousetrap. And the paradox is that at the heart of creativity is change, and yet when we repeat that thing for audiences, in many cases the change stops, and we want the change to stop, at least for a period of time, as we bed the show in and then repeat it. And we don't necessarily want the play to be that different on different days unless that's part of the creative intention. And so we've got the paradox that we're drawn into creating something that's disruptive and makes change happen, but then somehow we also want the change to stop so that the show becomes predictable and repeatable, and then change becomes the enemy. And when I do interviews in Fringe festivals, as I've been doing here in Brighton Fringe in the middle of May 2025, I find it interesting because I ask a question often to the writers and to the directors, and in a lot of Fringe work the writer and director can be the same person, or the writer is often in the room, at least at the start of a run, and he's very closely involved with the production. I say, how does the writer and the director get on? Because at certain ways you need to print the script. Literally, that's the expression, print it, which means we're now stuck with these lines, we're not going to change it. And the writer can be really reluctant to leave the room and literally is writing on the script, and unless they're thrown out, they'll write on the script forever. Equally, the writer might have a vision for how this needs to be done, and they don't like to come back to a script where stuff has been cut, or where stage directions have changed, or where that play has parts of it they don't really recognise in their original artistic vision. And that can create conflict, and that conflict can be creatively positive and lead to more change until we finally print it, or it can be negative in that there is a clash of vision between writer and director. And so there's the paradox, and the paradox can play out very practically. I'm going to take the example of a Fringe festival when you might get some negative reviews. And I am well aware of performers who I know personally who do not read any of their reviews until, if they read them at all, until after their Fringe run. And then they might make changes, but they do not want to be disrupted while they're in that flow of repeating the show. Now, there might be director's notes and small changes might be made, but actually there is still this paradox of we want to do the same show every day. We want the get-in to take as long as it does. We want the impact on the audience to be pretty much the same. That even happens in improv. In improv, what you might find is, of course, the content is different as we improvise, but actually the order of the show, the activities, the times when we ask the audience for suggestions is the same every night. And some people might say there's a deception going on there that certainly works for improv, in that if we're literally doing show after show after show, the thing we need to hang on to is the structure that underpins all this variation in content. Now, we can sit easy as artists, as performers, as theatre makers, with the notion that the aim of having made a change, a creative act, is to then stabilise it. So until we decide, it remains stable and change becomes the enemy. But equally, it might well be that what we want to do is work on change all the time and be restless and a bit chaotic, and never be satisfied with work, and that it's somehow dynamic and malleable and has a liquid quality to it. And the only danger of that is the same show that got a great review one night gets a terrible review the next. But perhaps the big question too is, what do you do with those negative reviews? If the negative reviews are saying this is too long, that there is an imbalance in the cast, that the script lacks originality, that there were problems with sightlines and it wasn't blocked properly, do you just hang on to your vision and ignore those reviews, or do you use those reviews as a trigger for change? And I hear expressions like it's just one person's opinion, you can take it or leave it, but it's all subjective. And yet sometimes what might come through, and you can sometimes see this in criticism that happens in, say, medical journals, that we have to listen to the change because we've got the process wrong for generating a medicine that works. And it can happen also that there are certain practices, say in the skill of cooking, where something's going to get burnt or the taste is going to be affected by a certain cooking process, and that a critic picks up on that. And do we take that on board or not? Because the food could be better, because there are some universal principles about how to make food. Does that apply in fringe theatre? Does that apply in stand-up comedy? You can decide that for yourself. But the danger is if we become obstinate and fixed and dogmatic against change, the danger is that the show will continue to get bad reviews, and we'll find that out after 3 or 4. The other danger is that if we just capitulate and surrender and submit to any comments people make from outside and keep changing stuff, is we never get the consistency and the satisfaction that comes from being able to repeat something again and again and again and get good reviews because the show is as good as it was last time we got a review. And that's the paradox. The paradox for you is that you may well have been drawn into the arts, literally to love change, to bring about a change in your life, or well, the wind is really whipping up here, to bring about a change in your life, because you're not the same person having written that work. And it's different, and people are going to come in, their lives potentially are different too. And you can't know what happens, but somebody might just come and see your stand-up show, and it's absolutely snapped them out of their depression because they laughed so much. It could be just one joke absolutely hit them in just the right way or the wrong way. It can be that the play absolutely made them feel a bit alienated from themselves as they looked in the mirror and saw themselves in the mirror of the drama. That character I really dislike. Don't trust that character on stage, and that's me, and I don't want to be that character. Classic change, disruption from theatre. So I just invite you to sit with that, and maybe I'll caricature it by saying, are you somebody who makes change creatively, but then seeks consistency and stability as fast as possible, and then becomes quite obstinate about making further changes? It's printed. Or are you somebody who, once you've made the change is never over, and you like things to emerge and you like things to flow, but then what you notice is that your performances, your art is uneven, is inconsistent, and one good review one day leads to a bad review another? I'd suggest it's just something to reflect upon. It's certainly something to think about what your intentions are when you start to invest heavily in doing a whole month run at something like the Edinburgh Fringe. Share your experience with others, but ultimately and simplistically, are you somebody who changes and then looks for stability? Or are you somebody who changes and doesn't want the change to ever be stable?